Good morning to all my friends and family, and welcome to this episode of Jim's 5am Club. It's early morning, it's Monday, the start of a new work week, and it looks like it's going to be a clear day, a beautiful day. Yesterday, Sunday, was an absolute cracker. I went for a long drive yesterday. I went to Mudgee and back via Safala, and had a great time going to see Safala, which I hadn't been there for 45 years, and also being to Mudgee for the first time, where I specifically went to Mudgee rather than passing through Mudgee. And it's a wonderful place with its new wineries and just beautiful scenery. Anyway, today what I'd love to do is to go through and talk about another book summary. And today's book summary is one by an author known as Trout, and it's entitled Positioning. And it talks about marketing and how it's important to position your product, to position your proposal so that you get maximum bang for the buck and be able to stand out in an increasingly crowded market that we see today. So the author makes a bold statement, and I guess we all are aware of this to a certain extent, that it's not how good your product is or what it does, but it's more about how it's positioned. And the positioning of your product will have the greatest impact on its sales, on its marketability, and on its eventual success, because it's not about being the best. I think we've learnt this time and time again. It's not about being the best or standing out as the best anymore. You basically need to stand out, and you don't necessarily have to be the best, but you need to be positioned and known to others. There's a famous saying that we're all aware of. It's not what you know or who you know. Or a lot of people say it's not what you know, but who you know. But the marketing gurus of the world go one step further. It's not what you know or who you know, but rather, more importantly, it's who knows you or who knows your product that is going to determine and to support your ongoing success. So this book talks about the importance of making an effort to position your product, and also makes an important point which I wasn't quite aware of, but I now do understand it better, in being one of the first to make a claim, to be one of the first to be out there and have that prime mover advantage, and not to focus on perfection, but to focus more on progress. It's more important to get something out there in the market which is not 100%, but a leader in its field, and then you can hone it, then you can shape it, then you can make it better. But I guess there are some limitations to this. You don't want to have a product out there which is a complete failure, because that will spoil it forever and a day. But if it's good enough to a certain extent, getting it out there, positioning it, will probably mean more to sales and to its success than having something which is completely perfect in the marketplace. So the author goes on to explain that we need to have a crack and to break through the overcrowded and over communicated markets and society that we live in. Now, every single day we're bombarded by millions and millions of marketing messages, of which the vast majority never get through. And the author then takes us on a journey and talks about the history of advertising and marketing and product development, and says that we've gone through 3 significant major advertising eras. Initially, we had the product era, where the best product won. So if you had a product and it was the best of breed, then you would capture massive market share, and it happened in many industries. Then following that, as more and more products came out and a lot more people were competing for the same space, it became an image marketing push. So you tried to associate your product with a particular celebrity, with a particular image, so that the upper and ever aspiring consumers would latch on to your particular product because it created and it facilitated and it leveraged a particular image that they desired, usually around about being sexy or being good looking or being successful in itself. But this image era was massive, and now we've come one step further, and it's called the positioning push, where it's no longer as effective to be the best product or to have the right image, because there are lots of images out there that are being stolen, misappropriated, used to leverage products. It's now about positioning your product and maintaining and occupying a particular niche. So let's just go through each one of these. As we said before, we had the product era, where it was all about features and benefits and the USP, the universal selling points or positioning. And then we had the image era, which was based on reputation and brand. You know, brands became popular, and it caused an opportunity, I guess, for people to attach to a particular image, just like the Marlboro Man became very masculine. But these days, as we said, it's all about positioning, and the best products and brands don't work anymore. So we need to be a lot more creative, is what the author is saying. We need to be a lot more creative in our advertising in order to break through and to win the hearts and minds of the consumers out there in that crowded space. So the news is that you don't need to be the best. You don't need to be the fairest, the most beautiful to win over Prince Charming. All you need to do is be positioned in the right place at the right time, and to identify the things that you need to do in order to stand out and to make the most of the opportunities that are made available. So I'm having a struggle here to read my notes. Just let me have a look. So the author here goes on to talk about that you need to be the first to sneak in, and to need to link your product and win the heart and minds of the consumers, the people who you're targeting out there. And they talk about finding a niche or finding a hole. And the easiest and best way of doing it is being the first to claim something. And we look back through time, we look back over history, and the things that come to mind are people like Muhammad Ali, the boxer, who was a good boxer, an okay boxer, but he was the first to claim that he was the greatest. And just by making that claim, thrust him into fame and fortune, because people attached that claim to his image, and he was able to make the most of it. You know, there are many examples where being the first to say something, being first to claim it, means that you get to own it. And I remember in marketing, when I was working at OTC, I had a manager there who always said, in your work, in your organisation, you just don't go there to work and to do as you're told. Each person has an opportunity to express themselves as best they can and to make a claim and to stake a claim. Just because it's not your job doesn't mean that you can't stake a claim in a particular field and be the best in that job area and stand out in your organisation. So he was a bit radical, but he was the marketing director, and he says that nobody gives you a flag and says this is your territory and this is your job and this is where you need to add value. Each person in an organisation has the ability to grab their own flag and to place it in the ground and stand out and say, this is mine. I'm going to be the leader in this particular area. And then it's up to the organisation to either knock you off your perch or get rid of you. But typically in many organisations, most people who do their work are very timid and don't want to create waves. And it's the ones who make a stake and stake a claim are the ones who eventually stand out and make a career of themselves and also end up becoming great leaders in their field. So other people in history who have made the claim and who have stand out and who have changed the world. Now we've got plenty of examples. Jesus is one, of course. There is Alexander the Great. There are so many examples of people who have just woken up one day, stood up one day and said, this is who I am and this is what I stand for. And this is what we need to do with our products and services to be there making the claim, making the bold claim and letting the market, letting the consumer decide once and for all what their belief is. For example, the Bic pen. When I was growing up, all pens were referred to as Bics. Not because they were branded as Bics, but because Bic was the first company to put out the ballpoint pen. Then any other pen that came along was referred to as a Bic. And there are heaps of these examples. And the author is saying, this is what we need to do. We need to find and occupy a niche, be original, be authentic. And there's absolutely no value in being a copycat and just copying what other people do unless you are much cheaper than them. I guess over time what we've learnt when I was young, that Japanese products were copies of Western products. And I remember growing up, when people actually called things, I guess nowadays if you said that, it would come across as being racist. But when I was growing up, things that were made in Japan, which were copies of things that were made in America or in England, were referred to as Japanese junk and weren't considered to be of quality. Just like these days when people make references to Chinese-made products, or maybe a decade ago. But what we've seen over time is that products that are made in China, products that are made in Japan, products that are made in Korea and across Asia have slowly but surely become high-quality products and are no longer referred to as second-rate products. But they started their life as copies, but they've gone up the value chain and made improvements and now create products and innovate products to the point where they've overtaken their American and British counterparts in terms of their production. But as the author says here, there's no value in being a copycat unless you can do it cheaper, much, much cheaper. And that's what the Chinese are doing now with work utes. They're bringing out all these cheap, much, much cheaper versions. And I guess eventually they'll become the leaders in that field as well. So once again, the point is that the author makes is it's better to be speedy, i.e. be the first, rather than to be better. And there's a French saying here. My French isn't all that good, but I'll try and say it. Cherchez le créneau. And it means look for the hole and then fill it. So the objective of marketing in 2022 and for the next X number of years, who knows how long it is not to be the best product or to be associated with particular things, but to find a hole and then fill it. And it goes against being bigger and better. But times have changed. Just like that harbour bridge there filled the purpose to join one part of the city to the other part, the Opera House there was all about positioning. It was positioned in a beautiful place to stand out. I worked at IBM many years ago, who tried to be all things to all customers. But just like Swiss cheese, there are all these little gaps throughout the cheese that allowed small competitors to find a hole and fill it. And they slowly but surely built their business models on the little gaps that IBM had created. The little markets, the sub-markets that IBM was unable to fulfill and to address. And these small gaps ended up becoming major markets, because what happened was that the competitors got a foothold, a small foothold, but as they built their capability in that small foothold, then they were able to move on and fill other gaps, the many, many gaps that had been left in this huge growing market. So there are many gaps that we said, and what the author talks about. There's a price chrono. There are a number of different things, but if you're just trying to fill a price gap, then it's a race to the bottom, is what the author is saying. You're better off identifying gaps that you can fill, that are sustainable, where you can actually charge a premium rather than cut your cost or cut your price and eat away at your profitability. So there's and the various chronos here. Here we go. I've just found them. There's a sex chrono where Philip Morris used it with the Marlboro Man, with masculinity. There's the age chrono, where you have your product specific for children, and children have become a lucrative market. You've got Apia with its insurance for the over 50s. And you've got to understand that if you try and be everything to everybody, just like people pleasers try and please everybody at once, what you'll find out is that by trying to do everything for everybody, you end up pleasing nobody and being the despised outsider. So you're better off specialising and focusing your effort, according to this author, on a particular gap. And I remember years ago, a friend of mine, John Nematala, who was an expert, who was an absolute champion at networking and building groups and contacts and having a cult-like following in the IT space. He said, James, whenever you walk into the room, rather than walking up and talking to a big group of people and trying to break into that group and be part of that group, what you're better off doing is, if you don't know anybody in that group, you're best advised to just go and speak to somebody who's on their own. There is much more value in talking and building a connection with one person on their own, rather than using all of your effort and energy to try and break into an established group, which is quite cliquey. As we know, these groups in business are quite cliquey, and rarely do you get an opportunity to break into those groups. And when you're chatting to that person who's on his own, you don't know who he may be or who she may be, what you do is you start your own little well, your own little bigadaki, as the Greeks say, and then you address and bring other people into that little group, other people who have just joined the room, who have got nobody to chat to. You welcome them into your group, and before you know it, you've got 4 or 5 people, and you've built your own little group there, which makes you more marketable and more interesting to the people in the bigger groups who thirst for networking opportunities, and you become a go-between to enable your little group to meet up with other people. So very wise point, very wise man, and as I said, an expert networker, somebody who always gets on with people and knows how to, I guess, not manipulate, but how to play the game, I guess, is the best way of doing it, to achieve the outcomes that he wants to achieve. So beware of the everybody trap. If you're trying to break in to the everybody and be meaningful to everybody, you may end up being nobody in the end if you're not careful. So focus on a niche is the key message from this book, and we basically need to turn away people in order to attract them. It's funny because many years ago I saw an article about horse trainers and horse whisperers, and the key message that I got from that was that horses, just like people, are social animals. They love to be part of a group, and just like people, they need to be social. They need to connect with people and others within a particular environment. And they say that if you want to train a horse, if you want to tame a horse, the first thing you need to do to that horse is to give it space and to push it away, to show that horse that you don't want it. You don't want it near you. You don't want connection with it. And what that does is it triggers a desire in that horse to want to connect with you. I guess a lot of books, a lot of people on dating and building connection with the opposite sex talk about this in a roundabout way in terms of treat them mean to treat them to make them keen. And in a similar way with horse training, in a similar way to what the horse whisperers do, it works, I guess, with the opposite sex as well. So, push people away in order to attract them. And this can also be used in the business sense. I've worked in pricing most of my professional life, putting together bids, and you do come across customers who are bloody pains in the butt. The cheap ones who want the best price, who want cheap all the time. And the best lesson that I learned here is that when you have customers who are always looking for cheap prices and are a pain in the butt, because usually the ones who want the good deals and the cheap prices are also the ones who create the biggest problems, the biggest challenges in your organisation. So they're usually the most expensive to service as well. So the best thing you can possibly do in business, and it depends on what stage of business you're in, of course, but it's best just to push them away and tell them that you can't really service them. And you'll see how quickly their tune will change and they'll accept higher prices, because sometimes people just need to be told that they're a pain in the butt, they're not profitable, and there are other customers, other people who treat us better. So there you go. It's all about positioning. I was expecting to see an ocean liner here today, but slowly but surely this international passenger terminal will be, the view will be blocked out by the massive ocean liners that will be coming in. But I'm heading off to work now, so thank you very much for joining me on this episode of Jim's 5am Club, where we went through another wonderful book. And I've summarised in vlog form, I guess, well over 1,000 books now, so I'm well on the path to reaching my next key goal, which is 2,000 vlogs on Jim's 5am Club. I'm up to 1,332 or 33. I did 4 vlogs yesterday when I went to Mudgee and walked around, and I'll try and do 1 vlog a day during the week just to keep up the momentum, because it's all about learning something new every day. That's my mantra: live, learn and pass it on. And of course teaching something new every day by taking what we've learnt and passing it on. And I do it via the Jim's 5am Club YouTube channel, where we just walk and talk and basically see what's happening around us. Anyway, take care everybody. Have a great Monday, a great start to the week, and wishing everybody all the very best. Bye for now.